There comes a moment in life, quiet, unexpected, and deeply personal, when your way of seeing the world changes forever. It is the moment you begin to see God in all things, not just in miracles, not only in answered prayers, but in ordinary moments, painful seasons, silent waits, and even in unanswered questions. When this vision awakens, life does not merely improve, it shifts. Before this moment, life often feels divided. We label things as a spiritual or worldly, good or bad, sacred or ordinary. We look for God only in worship, in blessings, or in moments of victory. But when your eyes are opened, you realize God has always been present in the process, in the struggle, in the delay, and in the becoming. When you see God in all things, your pain gains meaning. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin asking, what is God forming in me? The hardship that once felt like punishment becomes preparation. The delay that felt like rejection becomes protection. You understand that nothing is wasted when God is involved. Your perspective on people changes too. You become slower to judge and quicker to forgive. You begin to see others not as obstacles or threats, but as souls on a journey, just like you. Even difficult people become instruments that reveal your patience, humility, and capacity to love. Compassion replaces resentment because you recognize that God is working in them as He is working in you. Fear also loses its grip. When you see God in all things, you understand that you are never alone. Even in uncertainty, you trust that divine order is at work. You may not know the outcome, but you trust the author. Faith replaces anxiety because you realize that the same God who guides the stars is guiding your steps. Gratitude becomes your language. You no longer wait for life to be perfect to be thankful. You give thanks in the middle of the storm, in the slow progress, in the unseen growth. Every breath becomes a gift. Every moment becomes sacred. Life itself becomes an act of worship. The true transformation in life does not begin when situations change, doors open, or problems disappear. It begins when your way of seeing changes. Many people wait for better conditions to feel peace, joy, or faith. They believe that once life becomes easier, clearer, or more successful, that their hearts will finally settle. But the moment you see God in all things, you realize that peace was never tied to circumstances, it was tied to perspective. Before this shift, life feels reactive. Your emotions rise and fall with events. When things go well, you feel close to God. When things fall apart, you feel abandoned. But when perspective changes, you begin to understand that God's presence is constant even when circumstances are unstable. The same God who is with you in victory is with you in loss, confusion, and waiting. This shift in perspective teaches you that external conditions do not define internal strength. You may still face uncertainty, rejection, delays, or hardship, but they no longer control your identity or your faith. Instead of asking God to remove every challenge, you begin to ask Him to open your eyes within the challenge. You start recognizing that God is not absent in the storm. He is present, shaping you through it. When you see God in all things, disappointment no longer destroys you, it refines you. You stop interpreting every setback as failure and begin to see it as direction. Closed doors stop feeling like rejection and start feeling like redirection. What once felt like loss begins to reveal hidden protection. This new perspective allows you to trust God's purpose even when the path makes no sense. This shift also changes how you measure progress. You stop chasing constant happiness and start valuing growth, character, and alignment. You understand that life is not meant to be free of difficulty, but full of meaning. Even in slow seasons, you recognize that something is being built within you. Patience, faith, endurance, humility. Seeing God in all things does not mean denying pain or pretending everything is good. It means acknowledging reality while trusting divine intention. You learn to stand in the middle of uncertainty with confidence, knowing that God is working behind what you can see. And once this perspective takes root, life no longer controls your peace. Your faith does. Many people search for God only in extraordinary experiences, miracles, breakthroughs, answered prayers, and moments of visible victory. They believe God is closest when life feels powerful and successful. But when you truly begin to see God in all things, you realize His presence is not limited to the spectacular. God is just as present in the ordinary, the routine, the painful, and the overlooked moments of life. Before this understanding, it is easy to assume that silence means absence. When prayers are unanswered and progress feels slow, doubt begins to grow. You wonder where God is and why He seems distant. But the truth is, God often works most deeply when life feels quiet. The absence of dramatic change does not mean the absence of divine activity. In fact, some of God's greatest work happens beneath the surface, where transformation is unseen but profound. In ordinary moments, daily responsibilities, small conversations, repetitive routines. God is shaping discipline, consistency, and faithfulness. These moments may feel insignificant, but they build spiritual strength. Just as roots grow quietly underground before a tree ever bears fruit, God uses the ordinary to prepare you for what is coming. When you recognize this, no moment feels wasted. God is also present in difficult seasons. Pain, loss, disappointment, and struggle do not drive Him away. They often draw Him close. Hardship reveals what comfort cannot. Your dependence on God, the depth of your faith, and the strength of your spirit. In moments of weakness, God's presence becomes your support. Even when you cannot feel Him, He is still sustaining you. Seeing God in difficult moments changes how you endure them. Instead of rushing to escape pain, you begin to ask what God is teaching you through it. Trials become classrooms. Struggles become places of growth. You start to understand that God is not always trying to remove the challenge. Sometimes He is using it to reveal His power within you. When you recognize God in both the miraculous and the mundane, your faith matures. You no longer depend on constant signs to believe. You trust God in stillness as much as in movement. Ordinary days become sacred and difficult moments become meaningful because you understand that God is always present, always working, and always near, even when life feels heavy and unremarkable. Pain by itself feels cruel, unfair, and unbearable. When experienced without understanding, it can harden the heart, weaken hope, and distort the way you see life. But the moment pain is viewed through faith, it begins to change its meaning. It may not disappear, and it may not lessen immediately, but it no longer feels empty. Through faith, pain gains purpose. Without faith, pain asks, why is this happening to me? It feels personal, random, and destructive. With faith, the question shifts to, what is God forming in me through this? This change in perspective does not deny the reality of suffering, it gives it direction. You begin to understand that pain is not always a sign of God's absence, but often evidence of His refining work. Faith reveals that pain has the ability to shape character in ways comfort never could. Strength is developed in resistance. Patience is born in waiting. Compassion grows from wounds. Humility is learned when control is lost. Through painful experiences, God exposes areas that need healing, correction, and growth. What once felt like breaking is often shaping something deeper and stronger within you. When pain is viewed through faith, it also teaches trust. You learn to rely on God when your own strength is insufficient. You begin to understand that you do not have to understand the process to trust the purpose. Faith allows you to walk through suffering without becoming consumed by it. Instead of allowing pain to define you, you allow God to guide you through it. Pain also becomes a source of connection. Through suffering, you gain the ability to understand, support others who are hurting. Your pain becomes a language of empathy. What you survive becomes a testimony. Faith turns wounds into wisdom and trials into tools that can help others find hope. Seeing pain through faith does not mean welcoming suffering, but it does mean refusing to let it be meaningless. Even in the darkest moments, faith holds on to the truth that God is working within the pain, not against you. And through that trust, pain transforms from something that destroys into something that strengthens, deepens, and prepares you for what lies ahead. Delays can feel like one of the most frustrating experiences in life. When you are ready to move forward, when your heart is eager and your plans seem clear, waiting feels unnecessary and painful. It is easy to interpret delays as rejection, failure, or God saying no. But when you begin to see God in all things, you realize that delays are rarely denial. More often, they are divine protection and preparation. A delay can be God's way of shielding you from something you cannot yet see. What you desire may be real, but the timing may not be right. There may be circumstances, people, or conditions that would harm you if things happen too soon. God sees the full picture while you see only the moment. What feels like waiting may actually be God preventing unnecessary loss, disappointment, or damage. Delays also serve as preparation. Often the blessing you are asking for requires growth you have not yet completed. Character must mature before responsibility increases. Faith must deepen before elevation occurs. Wisdom must be developed before opportunity arrives. In the waiting season, God is shaping your mindset, strengthening your endurance, and aligning your heart with His purpose. Waiting exposes areas of impatience, fear, and self-reliance. It teaches surrender and trust. In delay, you learn to rely on God rather than control outcomes. You begin to understand that timing matters as much as desire. What comes too early can destroy what was meant to bless you. God's timing is not meant to frustrate you, but to ensure that what He gives you can be sustained. Delays also refine motivation. They force you to examine why you want what you want. Is it for validation, escape, or comparison? Or is it aligned with growth, purpose, and calling? Through waiting, intentions are purified and distractions are removed. When you view delays through faith, they stop feeling like wasted time. You realize that something important is happening beneath the surface. Even when progress feels invisible, preparation is ongoing. What seems like stillness is often silent movement. And when the moment finally arrives, you discover that the delay was not holding you back. It was getting you ready. One of the greatest fears people carry is the fear of wasted time. You're spent in the wrong places, relationships that ended in pain, choices that led to regret, and seasons that felt unproductive. Without faith, these experiences feel like permanent losses. But when you see God in all things, you begin to understand a powerful truth. Nothing in life is wasted when God is involved. God does not erase your past, but He redeems it. Every experience, whether joyful or painful, becomes material in His hands. What you thought was a mistake becomes a lesson. What felt like failure becomes instruction. What seemed like loss becomes wisdom. God has the ability to take even broken seasons and use them to build something meaningful and purposeful in your future. Seasons that felt unproductive often shape you in unseen ways. While it may look like nothing is happening externally, God is working internally, developing patience, humility, discernment, and resilience. These qualities cannot be rushed or learned in moments of success. They are formed in quiet, hidden seasons where growth is happening beneath the surface. Even wrong turns are not wasted. God is able to redirect paths without discarding purpose. Detours may delay the destination, but they often prepare you for it. Through them, you gain insight, strength, and clarity that you would not have developed otherwise. God's grace is powerful enough to meet you where you are and guide you forward without condemning where you've been. Relationships that ended, doors that closed, and plans that fell apart often serve a greater purpose. They teach discernment. They reveal truth. They remove what cannot go where God is taking you. What you once mourned as lost later reveals itself as necessary separation. When you truly believe that nothing is wasted with God, regret loses its power. You stop living in the past and start trusting that God is using in every chapter of your story. Even the painful ones become part of a greater design, one that is shaping you, strengthening you, and aligning you for what lies ahead. When you begin to see God in all things, one of the most profound changes happens in the way you see people. Before this shift, it is easy to view others through the lens of offense, competition, comparison, or self-interest. You judge intentions quickly, react emotionally, and define people by their mistakes or how they treat you. But when your vision becomes God-centered, your perspective on people deepens and softens. You begin to understand that every person is carrying a story you cannot fully see. Everyone is shaped by experiences, wounds, fears, and hopes that influence their actions. Seeing God in all things does not excuse harmful behavior, but it helps you respond with wisdom instead of bitterness. You stop allowing offense to control your emotions because you recognize that God is teaching you maturity through human interaction. This shift also helps you see people as instruments in your growth. Some are sent to encourage you, some to challenge you, and some to expose areas in your heart that still need healing. Even difficult relationships begin to reveal lessons about patience, boundaries, humility, and forgiveness. Instead of asking why people are difficult, you begin to ask what God is teaching you through them. Seeing God in all things reduces the need to compete or compare. You no longer measure your worth by someone else's success or approval. You understand that God's plan for your life is unique, and so is His work in others. This awareness creates peace because you stop striving to prove yourself and start walking in confidence and purpose. Compassion grows where judgment once lived. You become slower to label and quicker to listen. You realize that transformation is a process, not an event, and that God is still working on everyone, including you. This humility allows grace to flow freely in your relationships. When you see God in all things, relationships become less about control and more about growth. You interact with people not merely as sources of pain or pleasure, but as part of God's shaping process in your life. And through this understanding, your heart becomes more patient, more discerning, and more aligned with the way God sees others. Judgment often comes from limited vision. When you see only actions and not the heart, only behavior and not the burden, it becomes easy to criticize, label, and distance yourself from others. But the moment you begin to see God in all things, judgment starts to lose its grip and compassion begins to grow naturally. You realize that people are not just what they show on the surface. They are shaped by struggles, wounds, and battles you may never fully understand. Before this shift, judgment feels like protection. It makes you feel safe, superior, or justified. But over time, it hardens the heart and narrows the soul. Seeing God in all things changes this inner posture. You begin to recognize how patient God has been with you, how many times you were given grace instead of condemnation. That awareness humbles you and softens the way you view others. Compassion grows when you understand that everyone is in process. No one arrives fully healed, fully wise, or fully transformed. People act out of pain, fear, insecurity, or unhealed trauma. While this does not excuse harmful behavior, it explains it. And understanding creates space for empathy rather than resentment. You stop reacting impulsively and begin responding intentionally. As judgment fades, listening increases. Instead of assuming motives, you become curious about stories. Instead of reacting to words, you consider the pain behind them. Compassion allows you to remain firm in truth while gentle in spirit. You learn to set boundaries without hatred and speak truth without cruelty. Seeing God in all things also helps you release the need to be the judge. You understand that correction belongs to God and your role is to love wisely. This frees you from carrying the emotional weight of bitterness and offense. Compassion becomes a form of strength, not weakness, a reflection of spiritual maturity. When compassion grows, relationships change. Conversations become safer. Forgiveness becomes possible. Healing begins. Not only in others, but within yourself. The heart that chooses compassion over judgment becomes a place where God's presence is clearly reflected. Difficult people are often the ones we wish God would remove from our lives. They test our patience, challenge our peace, and expose emotions we would rather keep hidden. It is easy to view them as obstacles, distractions, or sources of unnecessary pain. But when you begin to see God in all things, you start to recognize that even difficult people can become tools for spiritual growth. These individuals often reveal what comfort cannot. When everything is easy, your character remains untested. But in the presence of conflict, resistance, or misunderstanding, your true spiritual condition comes to the surface. Difficult people expose impatience, pride, fear, insecurity, and unresolved wounds. What rises in these moments is not random. It shows you where growth is still needed. God often uses challenging relationships to teach self-control and humility, learning to respond with calm instead of anger, wisdom instead of reaction, and love instead of offense strengthens your spiritual discipline. You begin to understand that maturity is not proven in isolation, but in interaction. How you treat those who challenge you reveals the depth of your faith. Difficult people also teach discernment and boundaries. Seeing God in all things does not mean tolerating disrespect or abuse. Instead, it teaches you when to step back, when to speak up, and when to walk away in peace. Through these experiences, you learn the difference between forgiveness and access, between compassion and compromise. Sometimes difficult people reflect parts of yourself you have not yet healed. Their behavior triggers emotions that point to internal wounds. In this way, God uses them as mirrors, revealing areas that need restoration. What feels like external conflict often leads to internal clarity. When you recognize that God can use even difficult people, resentment begins to lose its power. You stop asking why they are in your life and begin asking what you are meant to learn. Through this shift, conflict becomes instruction, resistance becomes refinement, and challenges become opportunities for spiritual growth. Fear thrives in uncertainty. It grows when you feel out of control, when outcomes are unclear, and when the future feels unstable. Left unchecked, fear begins to shape decisions, limit growth, and steal peace. But when you start to see God in all things, trust begins to rise, and as trust deepens, fear gradually loses its strength. At the root of fear is the belief that you are alone in navigating life. When you believe everything depends solely on your effort, fear becomes overwhelming. Seeing God in all things shifts this burden. You begin to understand that your life is not resting on chance, pressure, or human ability alone. There is divine guidance at work, even when you cannot see it clearly. Trust grows as you recognize God's faithfulness in past experiences. Moments that once seemed uncertain but ultimately worked out become reminders that God has been guiding you all along. This awareness builds confidence, not in your control, but in God's consistency. Fear weakens because it no longer has the final voice in your decisions. When trust deepens, you stop trying to predict every outcome. You learn to move forward even when clarity is incomplete. This does not eliminate caution or wisdom, but it removes paralysis. You understand that obedience does not require full understanding, only faith. Steps that once felt terrifying become manageable because you are no longer walking alone. Seeing God in all things also changes how you face failure. Fear of failure loses its grip when you trust that God can redeem any outcome. Mistakes no longer feel final. They become part of a greater process. This freedom allows you to take steps of faith without being controlled by anxiety. As trust continues to grow, peace becomes more consistent. Fear may still appear, but it no longer dominates. You learn to acknowledge fear without obeying it. Trust anchors your heart, reminding you that even in uncertainty, God is present, guiding, and working for a greater purpose. Anxiety often comes from a sense of chaos. When life feels unpredictable, when plans fail, or when circumstances spiral beyond your control, it whispers that the world is random, that mistakes are permanent, and that you are alone in facing them. But when you begin to see God in all things, a powerful truth emerges. There is divine order, and faith has the ability to replace anxiety with peace. Faith transforms the way you view uncertainty. Instead of fearing what you cannot control, you begin to trust that every detail of your life is being orchestrated with precision and purpose. What feels like randomness is off part of a greater design. Even moments that seem confusing or painful are being arranged to work together for your ultimate good. This understanding loosens the grip of worry. Anxiety thrives on a lack of perspective. It grows when you focus only on immediate problems or potential dangers. Faith shifts your focus upward, reminding you that God sees the beginning, middle, and end. You realize that your inability to predict outcomes does not prevent God from guiding them. When divine order is acknowledged, your heart can rest even in the middle of uncertainty. Faith also empowers patience. Anxiety often urges you to rush, to force results, or to seek shortcuts. But when you trust divine order, you understand that timing matters. Things arrive when they are meant to, and rushing only disturbs the flow of what God is accomplishing. Faith helps you wait with confidence, knowing that what is delayed is not denied. Faith replaces the mental chaos of what ifs with the calm assurance of divine wisdom. You begin to surrender control, not out of helplessness, but out of trust. You accept that while you may not see the full picture, God does, and He is orchestrating life in a way that is perfect for your growth, protection, and ultimate fulfillment. Moreover, faith transforms action. Anxiety can paralyze, leaving you stuck in indecision or constant worry. Faith, however, gives clarity. It allows you to act decisively, but with the understanding that outcomes are guided by God's hands. You move forward with courage, not reckless certainty, because your trust in divine order provides direction even in uncertain circumstances. When faith replaces anxiety, life shifts from a state of tension to a state of alignment. You no longer live in fear of what might go wrong. Instead, you walk with confidence in what is already in God's control. Decisions, relationships, and opportunities are approached with calm assurance, and peace becomes the natural companion of faith. Anxiety may still attempt to surface, but faith teaches you to acknowledge it without yielding to it. You learn to focus on the eternal perspective rather than immediate discomfort. Divine order becomes your anchor, and your heart gradually experiences a profound sense of calm that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. Faith does not remove the challenges of life, but it changes the way you experience them. You begin to understand that anxiety is not necessary when you trust in a God who sees all, knows all, and works all things together for your good. And through that trust, peace becomes not just a momentary relief, but a lifestyle grounded in the certainty of God's order. Gratitude is often treated as a response to good things. When life is going well, when prayers are answered, or when blessings are obvious. But when you truly begin to see God in all things, gratitude transforms from a reaction to a daily practice. It becomes a conscious choice, independent of circumstances, rooted in the recognition that God is present, active in every moment of your life. Before this shift, it is easy to overlook the small, ordinary blessings. You focus on what is missing, what is unfair, or what has gone wrong. Gratitude feels conditional. It depends on your circumstances being favorable. But when your eyes are open to God in all things, you begin to see that every breath, every sunrise, every small act of kindness, and even every trial carries the fingerprints of divine love. Gratitude grows not because life is perfect, but because God is constant. Daily practice of gratitude reshapes your mind and heart. It trains you to notice what is often overlooked, the warmth of a friend's support, the lessons learned from a failure, or the protection provided in unseen ways. This perspective's focus shift from scarcity to abundance, from complaint to recognition, from fear to trust. Each day becomes filled with moments worth acknowledging and celebrating. Gratitude also transforms pain into purpose. When challenges arise, it allows you to see beyond immediate discomfort to the growth and lessons being formed within you. Instead of asking only, why is this happening? You begin to ask, what can I be thankful for in this moment? Even suffering becomes fertile ground for appreciation when viewed through faith. When gratitude becomes a daily practice, it strengthens your relationship with God. You begin to acknowledge His constant presence and work in your life. Prayer shifts from a wish list to a conversation of thankfulness. Worship becomes less about asking and more about acknowledging. The more you cultivate gratitude, the more your heart aligns with God's perspective. Gratitude also changes how you relate to others. When your heart is focused on appreciation rather than comparison or complaint, patience and kindness naturally increase. You see the value in people and circumstances, even when they are imperfect. Your ability to forgive, encourage, and empathize grows because you understand that life itself is a gift to be cherished. As a daily practice, gratitude builds resilience. Challenges no longer feel overwhelming because your heart is trained to see blessings even in adversity. Life's trials are tempered by an attitude that recognizes God's ongoing work in your story. This does not mean denying reality or pretending everything is good. It means acknowledging that God is good even in the midst of difficulty. Ultimately, when gratitude becomes habitual rather than situational, it transforms your life from reactive to proactive. You no longer wait for reasons to feel blessed. You create a lens of thankfulness that shapes your perception of every moment. Your outlook shifts from scarcity to sufficiency, from despair to hope, and from anxiety to peace. Gratitude as a daily practice is not just a habit, it is a spiritual discipline that rewires your heart, aligns your mind with God's perspective, and opens your eyes to the divine presence in every circumstance, every person, and every moment of life. Before the shift of seeing God in all things, life often feels divided between the extraordinary and the mundane. We reserve our attention for remarkable events, celebrations, milestones, and moments of victory, while the everyday seems ordinary, repetitive, or even boring. But the moment you begin to see God in all things, your perception changes. The ordinary becomes sacred because you recognize that God is present not only in miracles, but in the everyday rhythm of life. Ordinary moments, washing dishes, commuting to work, preparing meals, or waiting in lines, take on new meaning. When viewed through the lens of divine presence, these simple acts become opportunities to practice mindfulness, patience, and gratitude. They are no longer tests to rush through or obstacles to endure. They are sacred moments where God can meet you and shape your character. Even conversations that once seemed trivial gain significance. A kind word, a smile, or a small gesture of service is recognized as part of God's work in the world. When you see God in these moments, you stop underestimating the impact of small actions. Every interaction becomes meaningful, every moment an opportunity to reflect God's love and grace. The sacredness of ordinary moments also teaches humility. Life is not only about grand achievements or dramatic experiences. It is in the consistency of daily life, the unseen effort, and the quiet obedience that God often works most powerfully. Recognizing His presence in the ordinary keeps your heart humble, reminding you that divine activity is happening whether or not it is celebrated by the world. Seeing God in the everyday also fosters a sense of wonder. Mundane routines no longer feel monotonous. They are infused with purpose and presence. The sunrise, the rustle of leaves, the laughter of children, or even a simple cup of tea becomes a reminder that God is near and active. Your attention shifts from seeking extraordinary signs to appreciating the divine in the here and now. This awareness transforms how you approach time. Waiting periods, slow progress, and repetitive tasks no longer feel wasted. Each moment holds potential for connection with God, for learning, for growth, and for reflection. Life itself becomes an ongoing act of worship when even the ordinary is seen as sacred. Recognizing God in ordinary moments also changes your relationships. You begin to notice the little ways others reflect His love through patience, support, or kindness. Small gestures of compassion, once easily overlooked, now carry divine significance. Every encounter is an opportunity to witness, honor, or participate in God's work. Ultimately, when ordinary moments become sacred, life itself is transformed. You live with heightened awareness, intentionality, and reverence. The sacred is no longer confined to churches, celebrations, or dramatic events. It permeates every breath, every action, and every interaction. Each day becomes a canvas where God's presence can be acknowledged, celebrated, and mirrored in how you live. As we bring this message to a close, remember this: the moment you truly see God in all things, everything in your life begins to shift. It is not a shift in circumstances alone. It is a shift in perspective, in heart, in understanding. Life stops being a series of random events and starts being recognized as a divine journey. Every moment meaningful, every challenge purposeful, and every blessing intentional. When you begin to see God in the ordinary, the difficult, and even the mundane, you stop living for temporary comforts and start living in alignment with His eternal purpose. Your pain gains meaning, your delays become preparation, and your struggles become opportunities for growth. Relationships are no longer burdens. They become instruments of learning, compassion, and grace. Fear no longer controls you. Anxiety no longer defines you. And even ordinary days become sacred. This shift is available to everyone. It does not require perfection, wealth, or a life free from trials. It only requires eyes to see, a heart to trust, and a willingness to surrender to God's work in every aspect of your life. So today, make the choice to see beyond what is visible. Look for God in the small things, in the quiet moments, and even in the challenges that seem unbearable. Watch how your life transforms, not because the world changes, but because your perspective has changed. Remember, when you see God in all things, life is no longer the same. Your heart is lighter, your steps are surer, and your journey is filled with purpose. Embrace it. Trust it. Walk in it. Because this is the moment where your life truly begins to shift.